budget meeting for 23-24. Just some simple, plain language, and that is the fact that as of today, we are not doing any discretionary spending. And we cannot do any discretionary spending until we approve this budget. It is my hopes that we can approve this at our council meeting on Tuesday night in Port Mouton. If we continue to delay it, our public works and our capital crew are unable to start any projects. They're unable to order materials. And I realize the council has spent a lot of time in deliberation, and staff have also spent time. And I am really, really hopeful that the point we are at today will solidify our thoughts to the point that Tuesday night we can approve this budget and move forward with our financial year of 23-24. Any questions on that statement? You understand the importance of today? Okay. Ms. Vina.
Good afternoon, everybody. Back again. We have the agenda up on the slideshow right now. We've had our remarks from the mayor. We're going to do what we normally do. We have a review of changes from the last draft. Director Grant sent me an email today regarding Cowie Well, so I want to raise that with council. It's a council decision. Councillor Charlton had some questions about Queen's Place wage reviews at the last meeting, so I want to review that with her and the rest of you, obviously. There were some changes made to the capital investment plan after the meeting we had Tuesday. And finally, there will be direction for staff. Does anyone have any questions about the agenda? Are we good to go? Councillor Hawks, it's nice to see you back. So, last version, we had already agreed that we would balance the budget by pulling from the surplus. So that's why you see the 0 at the top. At the meeting we had on Tuesday, the special council meeting, it was determined that we would add back the $72,500 municipal building renovations. We also subsequently received the RCMP. If you remember last meeting, I had it pending. So the difference was $25,727, which was okay, because we thought it was going to be more than that, so that was good. The next thing we're going to talk about is the Liverpool Bridge sidewalk redesign, and Director Grant can talk a little bit about that in a minute. And we put back in the money that we had taken out for the sidewalk study, because if we look at redesigning, I know the discussion was what exactly does council want, and when council decides, we can determine what we put in there. We had an email regarding our J-Class road cost share reduction, so that we added another $68,000 back into, or reduce the cost. And then we had the Queen's Place Amera Center hour wage correction of $22,254. So the change in the surplus transfer from the previous version was $152,258. So on the bottom, I just wanted, this is the same as what you'll see on section 8 of the budget booklet, which I believe is page 5. I wanted you to see as council exactly what we're pulling and funding from the surplus of prior years. So right now, we are funding the Mount Pleasant extension design for $137,620. We are funding the Liverpool Bridge sidewalk redesign of $175. We are funding the Queens Neighborhood Cooperative Grant of $203. We are funding the Council Chambers AV equipment of $40,485. And the remainder, $433,335, is what we need to pull from the surplus to balance the deficit to 0. Does anybody have any questions on that?
Joy.
Yes, sorry.
So, don't we have a surplus this year? We're calculating at 1.3 to 1.5 million.
Mm-hmm.
So you got prior years.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't it really just a year?
We could call it prior year, all the surplus is made out of numerous surpluses from numerous years. We don't keep them in separate pots. We just say this is the surplus and it's made of the last 15 years. That's why it says prior years. Do you know what I mean?
Yep, just that there's gonna be a surplus, we figure 1.3 to
Mhm.
1.5 million.
Yep.
Okay.
Any other questions?
So you could just put that funding from surplus, couldn't you?
Sure, this is just a slide.
It's
So I
just
could-
language.
Yeah, this is just a
It's
slide.
language, it's not gonna, language
No.
isn't showing up on the budget. Counselor Charlton?
I was just gonna say, I think there's confusion, it is still coming from the surplus,
Surplus,
which is our
yeah, that's right.
accumulating surplus reserve is all one, we don't separate it by.
No, we do not, no. Okay,
Continue.
so right now, before we go any further, I think it would be a good idea to talk about the Liverpool Bridge redesign, because I think it's important, that's a big ticket item, that council makes up their mind what exactly they're looking at. So I would ask that Director Grant perhaps join me at the table and speak to council about what exactly you'd like to have done on the bridge, because what you are deciding will make a considerable difference.
And thank you, Counselor Charlton, for asking that follow-up question about the bridge that Director Grant had recently updated CA meeting on.
That's right. So I guess moving forward, we have 4 options we consider with regards to the bridge. Excuse me. As far as the sidewalk goes, we can do nothing. We can rehabilitate what we have, which was the proposal from last year. There's another option to look at a realignment, which would broaden the sidewalk on one side. And then a 4th option, which was expressed by our engineering consultant, could be the potential to put a external sidewalk on the bridge itself, and then abandon the 2 existing sidewalk surfaces that are on the bridge. So I guess what we need direction on is where council wants to go from there. There's pros and cons to each option. The design proposed of $175,000 would look at either the realignment or the external sidewalk. And speaking with TIR, we're probably a couple of years before those solutions become viable projects based on their timeline to put stuff into action. But we do need to move forward with design one way or another, which will be the hold up with TIR to get it in progress.
Director Grant, I know most members of council have been spoken to by members of the public. Yesterday when I was talking to Councilor Romero, someone in her business actually brought that up out of the blue. It is on the mind of, I think, almost all the councilors in here, that somehow we need an immediate fix on all the pieces missing and whatever. But if you could expand on perhaps the external sidewalk, which we've never really talked about before, but I thought, what a nice way to get a wide bridge, a wide travel surface for cyclists, and then the safety-ness of the sidewalk being hanging on the bridge, like.
So I guess the direction to realign the bridge gets quite complicated when you leave the bridge surface, as far as merging with the existing Market Street in Bristol. So one of the alternatives that was proposed by CBCL would be to just put an external surface in, repair the bridge as it exists, remove the sidewalk that's there. What we would see from that would be just a prefabricated structure constructed on the outside of the bridge, very low maintenance. Operationally, it would be ideal for us, if that's council's wish. Things to be determined be with and those kind of considerations.
What's council's opinion on that? Councilor Muse?
So, will TIR help in the cost of that?
Not under my understanding from the agreement. The pedestrian surface is 100% the Region of Queens' responsibility. In the cost sharing agreement, there is 50-50 on railings and on the rideable surface, but not pedestrian access or active transportation support.
Other comments? Councilor Brown?
This would be pretty similar to what they did to the McKay Bridge in Halifax, on much smaller scale.
Smaller scale, but
Yeah,
similar,
but
yeah.
it would give, putting it on the outside, you've got the railing along there would give a lot of protection between pedestrians and traffic. Plus you'd have better views of the water from that walkway. So, I like the idea, and if you're talking about, the extended cost of realigning the road, that's probably not insubstantial.
Councillor Charlton?
I agree. I don't really understand how you'd realign that road well. The bridge in Milton also has their sidewalk on the outside, so I'm assuming if you were to put a new bridge in today, that's probably a standard? If you were having a sidewalk, like it would be on the inside?
Sure, yeah, and it'd be something very similar to what we see in Milton right now. That one up there measured 4.5 feet or 5 feet wide. It wasn't, generally sidewalks are 1.5 meters minimum is what they're speccing out now. Whether that is what council wants, I don't know. We'll have to think about that a little bit harder to provide 2 lanes of traffic because it is long distance.
Right.
And what service we're trying to provide people.
And the sidewalk would have to meet accessibility standards,
That's
right?
correct. The
I would-
accessibility standards will only require it to be 3 feet wide,
Mhm.
because it doesn't have any consideration for traffic in two direction. It's just 3
Yeah.
feet in a straight line, so it's kind of one of those other things you gotta think about.
So looking at the budget, so the 175, would that be if we wanted, if council decides to do an exterior sidewalk? Then is the 175 and the 30 still required, or is there a different number required in there?
The 30,000 would have been design work to rehabilitate in situ like it is right now, so we would remove that and the 175 would go in. Right now, CDCL is doing some work for us to get some high-level cost estimating, which will finalize that 175 to know where it comes at, and also identify the probable cost for either realigning the road or the external sidewalk option, which we anticipate to have that by Friday noontime.
And what can we do between now and this to make it smoother?
To improve.
Let's just, to make repairs.
To improve the existing, we've been trying with Line to get them to confirm that they have infrastructure. They don't. As it stands right now, all they can tell us, what we hear, is that they do have infrastructure in the sidewalk. We can't do any repair work until they give us clearance, which they will not provide. The progress that they made over the last 2 years was to remove that infrastructure, so I don't know if there's confusion on their end between whether it's still in service or it's not. We're waiting to hear back any day now to confirm that. Once we hear back, we can go in and start doing some remedial work to make it more suitable for the short term.
And we'd have money within the department to make those repairs.
That's correct.
So I guess the question is, are we in agreeance with removing the 30,000 and leaving the 175? With the notion that we'll be putting an exterior sidewalk on that bridge?
On one side?
Yes.
Pardon? Only on one side, the exterior side? Okay.
Yes. Deputy Mayor Fancy?
So we would be setting it up basically like Milton with the outside, and the water is better.
Very
for
similar.
walking, for meeting people, because if you don't, especially get two people who have any infirmities to try to meet, it's going to be difficult, so I like the water better. We're talking then that possibly removing the cement to create bicycle paths or something like that, maybe?
Not
Is that
necessarily. We would remove the sidewalk to ensure it's not perceived as being a sidewalk, that we don't have pedestrians
Right.
venturing out there where they don't belong. Whether it's just a paved shoulder on the surface in that area, we'll determine that down the road. But I mean, I would suggest that the sidewalk as it exists on the east side towards Liverpool Harbor will be removed, probably on the Bristol end where Emergency Seafood is, because it doesn't serve a purpose anymore at that point.
Right.
Similar on Market Street, unless development happens on the vacant property. Considerations that we have to make as we go through this.
Because the what, if you don't want to continue?
Just, yep, and then Councillor
Yeah,
Merrill?
okay, sorry. Because we do have a lot of problem with even bicycles on there. I've driven a bicycle a lot, so, to try to get across there, because there's no place to go.
That's
You're just holding up traffic until you get across. If the bicycle lanes could be somehow incorporated into it, it'd be a fantastic thing. I don't know if you're gonna have a wide enough area to be able to incorporate that.
And that's something we haven't even begun to think about yet. And it may be possible, but if it even if it is possible on the town bridge itself proper to put bike lanes in, the right of way on Market and on Bristol aren't sufficient enough to widen the sidewalks or any of that stuff, so we'd only be a very short, narrow solution to a longer problem that exists. So it might not be the solution we progress on.
Okay.
So as I stated earlier, we'd have a wider road width there.
There would be wider.
Which would be great for a cyclist, with
That-
or
yeah,
without a
it
line.
could provide some relief for those people.
Counselor Amaro?
How do you remove the sidewalks with the cables in there?
And that's what we're trying to establish with Bell. So all of their work, as you've seen them do, they put aerial on the east side of the bridge, was to remove everything that sits in the sidewalk surface right now, and it's giving them all the problems. So all the work they've been doing the last couple of years was supposed to eliminate all that in-ground infrastructure.
Oh,
So once that's gone, then we can remove the sidewalks and move on.
So again, I asked the question, are we okay, is there anyone who is opposed to leaving 175 for extension of a bridge, of an exterior sidewalk, and remove the 30,000? Is there anyone who does not agree with that?
Just to clarify,
Right.
175 is design work. It's not actually putting in a bridge. That bridge will be substantially more than 175, so this is just due to design work. Because as Mr. Grant said, it will take us a year or two to get permits to actually do any
And
substantial
further
work.
to that, we anticipate by Friday having an established probable cost of what the design and the bridge work would actually be.
Would that be in-house or contracted out?
All that
With
work,
sidewalk.
it would be contracted 100%.
But it certainly would remedy a decades-old issue. Okay, so, good on that one.
Okay.
Cowie
Nope.
Well.
Director Grant is now gonna talk about his ideas about Cowie Well.
Ideas. So we're all well aware of the inconvenience of Cowie Well, and we're proposing to completely overhaul the infrastructure that we have in that facility right now. Put all new piping, new UV, new filtration, to paint and seal the inside of it and clean it and give it a complete overhaul from one end to the other. Whether that solves the problem that we've been having recently, I can't guarantee that, but it certainly will improve the situation that we have. So I guess for consideration, $9,500 to be added on to the existing operating budget for Cowie Well for that work.
Now currently those, the well sits in the utility, but Director Grant raised the point of, it's not just the ratepayers that use that well, it's everybody that uses that well. So what we could do is we could have the cost in the operating, and we just transfer it over to, like, we'll transfer the revenue over to the utility so that there will be a wash in the utility, but the cost would sit in the operating. So we don't, because it would be, I'm not really familiar with Cowie Well, but it's my understanding that a lot more people than ratepayers use that well.
So in layman's terms, do you want to fund it out of the general tax rate?
Yeah.
Because everybody outside,
Yes.
everybody uses it, whether you're a utility customer or not. Is it fairest to
Yeah.
fund it out of the general tax rate, that
Yeah.
$9,500?
Yeah.
Everyone in agreement to fund the overhaul of Cowie Well off of general? I know people from Port Mouton and Milton all
Shelburne,
travel there for water.
Shelburne people.
Shelburne?
People
Counselor
around
Amaro?
and how long would that take to do that work?
What was the time on that equipment, a couple weeks?
It shouldn't be very long.
Yeah, so probably if we were to order that equipment today, tomorrow, probably within 3 weeks, 4 weeks, we'd be back up and running.
Can't do it until the budget's
Budget
passed though.
passed.
Yeah, I understand.
Just an aside,
Understand.
okay?
Okay, so yes on that one. Does it have to stay in the utility?
Well, when we did the rate study, it was in the utility.
But
So
we
the
could look
question
at
is-
getting it out of
correct.
the utility, because
So-
it really isn't fair to utility.
Well, and that was the thing, and Director Grant mentioned that it was raised during the rate study. Honestly, I don't remember. All I know is it's in all the financials that were used to calculate the rates. So we can't really pull it out now, but what we can do is when we do the rate study, because we're gonna get into doing one every 3 or 4 years rather than every 20, is we can move it.
Okay, thanks. Deputy Mayor Fancy?
Do we have to wait to the budget in the sense that, we do projects during the year, we break into the budget sometimes, so then we can order and get it going, so So if you can get the well up and running faster. I don't want to have to wait till next Tuesday to order just because we have to wait and sign on the dotted line. We break into budget for different things on different occasions.
I don't know what you mean by breaking into the budget, because
I'm not into the budget, into that's the wrong terminology. Not breaking into the budget. We'll have break-ins where we have to take money out of accounts, out of reserves, to be able to fund the project.
It's my understanding that because there's no budget in place, we can't do any discretionary spending, and that would be considered discretionary. So, I mean, I don't know, I'm not as well versed with the MGA as perhaps Chris would be.
So I guess if at the end of the day today, council's committed to setting a tax rate on Tuesday of next week,
Yeah.
then I'm comfortable allowing Mr. Grant to order the materials tomorrow.
Okay, that's.
But if there's no agreement to do that, then I'm not comfortable authorizing that expenditure, knowing that it may not make it in the final cut.
Queen's Place wages review, and thank you, Councillor Charlton, for asking the question at our last meeting.
Yep, so I went through everything, and I'm not gonna get into the ins and outs of it, but we did find a couple inconsistencies. There was 400 hours of groundskeeper work that was being allocated to Queen's Place. Anyway, we took everything out, we went right back to the beginning, and I did a summary of why there's such a big difference between the budget this year and the actual last year. So we had a fitness attendant position that was staffed for only part of the year. That made up over $30,000 of the difference between budget and actual for this year. Front desk had fewer hours covered by casual CSR due to staff shortages. We had an operational position replaced by a new employee who earned less than the former long-term employee. And our operational staff is lower due to the facility staff because we had one staff member who was on medical leave that she was not replaced. So if you look at this year's budget versus last year's budget, the difference of the $71,000 is made up of merit and cost of living for current staff. The base rate for casual employees is $18.50 from $17.16, I believe. Certification of one staff member increased that person's rate. More hours for facility operations, part-time staff, and the fitness center hours were increased to allow more personal training revenue generation by the full-time staff. And that was what made up that difference.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Charlton, for asking that question.
And the capital investment plan.
Capital investment plan, so,
Back on the other one.
All back to
Okay.
Queen's Place?
So
Yes.
I'm still lost on the rate increase to $18.50 an hour. In the last 5 meetings that we had, I thought we weren't allowed to give increases.
those
Wages.
increases were put in the first budget because I believe it was discussed here about a living wage, and those people were making the lowest of anybody here. It was so many meetings ago. But there was discussion regarding an increase because that was not believed to be a living wage. I believe it was the same meeting where Councillor Charlton said that the living wage would be $22.50. So we included the $18.50 for those people who are making significantly below that.
Not wanting to put anyone on the spot, any of our staff, do we have staff working at minimum pay?
At minimum wage?
Yeah.
Yes.
Mhm.
Or pretty close to it, yes.
Yeah.
And
Which is part of the problem, how we can't get people. And so we need to increase, and these are casual or part-time people, these are people that are working very few hours.
Yeah.
And so the only way to get people is to pay them a few dollars more. So, and with the minimum wage going up twice this year, I think,
Mhm.
our staff, some of our staff that aren't connected to minimum wage are making 50 cents more than the other staff that are making minimum wage. And they've been with us for many years, so we need to make some adjustments this year. So there is, in the budget provision for some increases for our groundskeepers, I think, some increases for these casual people to bring them up to a more suitable
Mhm.
variation between what minimum wage is
Mhm.
and what the base wage is.
Yep.
so I guess to Councillor Muse's comment, for all casual employees, so are we going to have that base rate increased to $18.50 for all of our casual employees? And not just those at Queen's Place?
Oh, the groundskeepers were the same.
So we put everyone, all of our
People that
casual.
were at that bottom 17
Okay,
something
all right,
were raised to 18.50.
All right.
Simply, it's about $1, a little over
Yeah.
$1, which is similar to what the minimum wage is raising
Yeah.
by $1. We're just simply keeping the gap between what the minimum wage is and what the employees are.
Yeah.
okay. Is everyone all right, fine with that? They understand that?
Okay.
So the casual employees were making more, and then when minimum wage went up, then they went up.
They didn't go up until we increased it
Right,
here. We're
but that's
suggesting
what
we
I meant.
increase it,
They
yes.
yeah,
And that's
they haven't
across
gone
all
up
the
yet.
And that's across all departments?
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay,
And
so
not
that's
all
fair.
of them were making that 17, whatever the rate you just spoke to. Some of them were even below that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true.
Okay.
So the capital investment plan, most of the change, well, all of the changes are on the front page. I think I have it here. Okay. So we added the design for the bridge, line 2 on the first year 23-24. So you'll see that there, 175. The biggest change for 23-24 is that you'll see the municipal funding for water and sewer east phase 2 for Waterloo Street is now $30,787. That is because we've applied the $763,000 that we received from municipal affairs for infrastructure to that project. So what that did was it increased the provincial funding to 1.2 million, and it decreased our funding. When I say our, I mean the region of Queens funding to $30,787.
But we did that by putting the 700,000 that we recently received and just called it provincial funding.
Yes,
But
it's a
it was our
conditional
money,
grant.
It was given to us.
Yes,
It's a conditional grant to
Yeah.
use for infrastructure or housing or whatever.
infrastructure, housing, active transportation, and accessibility.
Yeah, so recognizing we've got like 18 months to spend the money, or 20 months to spend the money, and the Waterloo Street project is the only project that we could come up with on the list that would be able to spend that significant amount of money within that time frame. There may be other ones that may spend 50 or 100,000, but this is the only project we can guarantee we can spend that money. The other projects, there's no guarantee. Some of the other projects may start, may be half done or not done at all.
And otherwise, we would have had to take $700,000 municipal funding and debenture it and long-term borrow
Correct.
it.
Mhm.
Counselor Charlton?
Just a couple questions. So the money that the province gave us, you said it was 18 or 20 months that we have to spend it?
Well, it's by, I think it's March 31st of 2025, so.
Because when I read that announcement, I thought like we were, when looking at Mount Pleasant, we don't have our feasibility study back yet, which I'm hoping we'll have in the next little bit. That we could potentially use that for expanding that infrastructure. So if, I understand from previous conversations, with Director Grant, he had said that, this, service extension design would be to get the project shovel ready, and that couldn't happen until 2024, 2025, and the next would be a year away, I guess, at minimum. And so if that is the case, then we could use that funding for that, if that's where we go, with that expansion in infrastructure, could we not?
You could hold the money till then and risk,
I
Right.
guess,
but we
You're-
need,
you're probably at least a year by the time you get the budget approved, you get design work done. You're probably, if it's gonna take us, I think Mr. Grant said it might be up to 2 years to get approval to do work on the bridge. It's gonna take significant time to get approvals from the province to dig up the provincial road there. In addition to all the other costing challenges we're gonna have with that particular project. So if you hold off and put it into that project and approve the budget and leave it out, then you may find out in 12 months' time that that project may or may not happen, and then there's no ability to spend that money within that timeline of 2025. We'll have lost that.
I'm a little confused. If we find out a year from now that that's not going forward, I thought we had till 2025 to spend that money.
You do.
but then we would have, next year, would have to spend that 700,000 on something else.
Right.
And right now, we have the need for $700,000. And if we can take that money from the province and we can put it on that Waterloo Street project, or we can long-term borrow debenture with interest, $700 and some thousand. And for your information, you recall that I had mentioned that the province we're not going to double the municipal equalization grant this year, but they were going to use the money somehow. So this is $32 million that the province used last year to double municipal equalization grants. They decided they weren't doubling municipal equalization grants because every municipality doesn't get money. There are some municipalities that get 0 municipal equalization grants. So they took the 32 million, and rather than just say everyone who gets the money gets double, they came up with a new formula so that every municipality receives something. So a municipality that never received money before now received, I think Deputy Minister LaFleche said, $240,000. The highest municipality, CBRM, they received $3 million of it. So this is the $32 million that was used last year to double, dispersed in another way, and it needs to be spent within a certain time period. If we don't spend it, I believe it's wise to spend it on this project rather than go out and borrow $700,000. Because if council's gonna move ahead on that project, if they decide next year to move ahead on that project, then next year they can decide where the money's coming from and finance it at that point in time.
I understand, could I follow up with that comment? I understand what you're saying, but the Waterloo Street project has never been allocated, the $793,000 that was on our capital sheet on April 4th of 2023, it was never allocated under
That's correct.
long-term borrowing. So
Because-
I'm uncertain why the comment about we'll have to long-term borrow it, because it wasn't allocated that way.
Where was the money going to come from
I
to
think
do that?
I think it was come from reserves, wasn't it? Municipal funding. So it
We were
really.
gonna fund it either to empty the reserve and then fund it through
Yeah.
operations.
So it's not gonna make a big difference, so what you're asking for, so if you wanna put it into and take it out, we'll simply put it in, leave it in a reserve, which would unmarked or designate it for Mount Pleasant, wherever you wanna designate it for, leave it money in the bank. But then we've gotta take $700,000 and $725,000 out of reserves, out of the sewer reserve or the water operating surplus, accumulated surplus, and spend that on it, which will, for the most part, empty those couple reserves, or empty the sewer reserve probably, and the water, take it down substantially. So whether you take it out of reserves and leave the other money in the bank, or take this money out of the bank, and so if you take it out of reserves, you leave the money there, and then when it comes a year down the road, if you're not gonna do that project in Mount Pleasant, then you've gotta very quickly find a way to spend $725,000 immediately that next year. You've got 12 months or 8 months, whatever it is, to spend it. That's what we don't wanna risk. But if you do, then you're still not going to be able to spend, potentially, you may not be able to spend $725,000 on that Mount Pleasant project before March 31st of 2025, depending on what the designs come back at, what the costs come back at, if we don't get permits. So it just, from staff's perspective, we don't wanna put council in a crunch where you're forced to spend that money somewhere you don't wanna spend it. Because if you don't spend it, you'll end up giving it back. So regardless if you take it out from one reserve this year or the other reserve, really makes no difference. We're just trying to make sure that if we're gonna spend the money this year, to make sure it gets spent according to the terms and conditions of the agreement, that we have a viable project that we're gonna move forward with and do it. Because even if you don't, so if you decide in a year's time, if you budget on the Waterloo Street project now, and in a year's time you decide to move forward with Mount Pleasant, then you're just gonna take that money out of the sewer reserve or the water operating surplus anyway, which is what we had planned to do now. So you're gonna do you're just moving money. So at the end of the day, you're gonna have the same result. But if council wants to show on the budget that it's up to a particular project, then council can do that. As a staff, we just don't wanna put you in a situation where we don't spend the money, and then a year down the road, you get into trouble where something happens and you can't do the Waterloo project, or gets delayed, or the Mount Pleasant project, and then we're scrambling to find a place to spend it, and we end up spending it somewhere we don't want.
Because I think we've seen over the last 18 months to 2 years that there's been significant delays with supply chain issues when you do big projects like this, so we're just trying to avoid that as much as possible. But C.L. McNeil's right, it's just the moving the money.
Counselor Muse?
So, I got no problem with putting some money there, but we got the 137,060.20. Why wouldn't we take the 137,000 out of that and put it in provincial funding?
Because it's ineligible expense. Design work is ineligible unless it leads to an immediate project, I think. So there's no guarantee that project's gonna go ahead. So at this point, it wouldn't be an eligible expense, I don't think.
They're very specific in the letter about what exactly you can use it for.
Towards housing,
Housing, yep,
right? So
building houses.
But it's actual housing, water, sewer, towards the housing, not design work. I don't think the design work's an eligible expense in the terms and conditions. So I'd have to double check, but I don't think it is.
Reading, the way I read it, I think it was made for that, but like I said, I'm no engineer.
We need to put a lawyer, though, a lawyer interpreting the agreement. But it's the same thing, if you move that 137, you're just putting the 137 somewhere else out of municipal funding, so it's the same, you're just moving the money.
It is, but the people, you know, in Queens County know we're getting this money for housing, new development. I think myself, it should go there, some of it, and leave the rest on Waterloo, but that's my opinion.
If it's, the money isn't specifically it's for infrastructure that supports housing. And cleaning up that Waterloo Street supports housing.
How's that support housing?
Because we're fixing infrastructure for housing.
It says expansion or renewal of water and wastewater treatment, storage and distribution systems, so I guess it would qualify in that
Yes.
regard.
Under the renewal. And I know there are some members of the public, because we've all received emails, that want to see this money tagged for a certain development. We have the money, we didn't plan to get the money, this came unexpectedly from the province, and what a wonderful opportunity to use it against the Waterloo Street project. When Director Grant priced the Waterloo Street project, was it 3 years ago, Director Grant, that you did the paperwork for that? Two? And had he been in today's world and did the pricing, then the numbers would have been much larger, because you priced the project at so many million, and now it's $1.5 million more simply because of cost of materials. So we're way under the mark on what we would have received from the federal and from the feds in the province on the Waterloo Street project. So had we been on the mark and had we had a crystal ball, then we wouldn't be sitting here discussing the fact that we're shy on our end, because we are shy on our end because of the overcosts, because we waited for 2 years to get this approval. So the province has sent us $700,000. I think what an opportunity to put it toward that project. It makes up for the gap. It makes up for the gap on our end. And if council decides to move ahead with the Point project, the money will be found at that point in time. Because that's what council does. If the majority of council, when we get our numbers in, if the majority of council wish to move ahead on the Point project and on the Cochrane Farm project, then council will find the money. But now we have this money that we can use to put on the Waterloo Street project and not have to take money out of reserves. So we can look at it as we're gonna use that money, we're gonna save the money in the reserves for when the Point project, if the Point project comes to fruition, then we'll have money in those reserves. To me, it just
No, I
Councillor Gidney?
understand your concept, and I agree, because all we're gonna do right now is shuffle. And
That's right.
bottom line is, we can earmark from out of reserves for the Mount Pleasant service, then that's fine. I'm in agreement with this.
Because council,
Thank you.
as we all know, if council makes a decision, then we find a way to get the money to make it happen.
Great, thank you.
Councillor Brown?
And if we do this on this project now and don't have to transfer money out of reserves, money stays in there, our interest rates are fairly high, so we end up with more money down the road by leaving the money invested and not taking it out just to satisfy
Public perception.
a public perception that you're taking it out of your right pocket instead of your left.
Right. Councillor Merrill, did you have?
No, no, I'm fine with Councillor Gidney's.
So that's 4. Carl, you're fine with that?
Yep.
Councillor Charlton, are you okay with that?
I understand, yeah, I guess I just anticipated maybe us talking about what we wanted to do with that money, so I was surprised when I saw the capital sheet in that way. I still am comfortable that I think the majority of council support those projects, so I think we can continue those conversations,
Sure.
once we have the feasibility study.
Yep. Thanks.
And normally there'd be a lot more discussion of what to do with that money, but
Right.
just because it just came in
Yeah.
2 weeks ago or whatever, and trying to get the budget approved, and knowing the timelines, if we don't get it in the budget now, then it's not gonna get done until next year, and that puts us in a little bit of a bind that we have to spend it very quickly.
And
And
there's
there
also
was-
no reason why we couldn't take that same amount of money out of the sewer reserve that we were gonna allocate there and put it towards that infrastructure.
Absolutely.
So tomato, tomato.
And Deputy Minister LaFleche said it was squeaked through on the last day they could release money before they shut down the budget. And that's why there was no indication other than the fact that somehow they were gonna spend that 32 million.
They're in the same boat that we are, they can't spend money until it's approved.
And, like, I think there's a lot of very good points here, and I guess there's always a concern that we don't go ahead and, we don't take money out when the time comes for a project that could go forward. But that's, I guess we're all in agreement that we want these projects to go forward, so we'll look at that when the time comes.
That's right. So things are fine as they are.
Okay, so let's move to the next page, because after Tuesday's meeting, you'll notice that we moved the water transmission redundancy, phase 2, from this year that we're budgeting in to the following year, because council wanted Public Works to focus on getting that water loop project complete. So you'll see that the water loop project obviously has been brought back ahead to 23-24 and 24-25. We've also added back in the difference for the infrastructure to Beach Meadows Beach for 24-25 to just finish up some of those things that we know we're not gonna get done next year. Sorry, yeah, this year. Does anyone have any questions about that? Those were the only changes.
And then who knows, by the time we get here
Yeah.
next year, it will all look different again.
Yep. Okay. So, that's the same page as it was before, just have it on there for. So from what I'm hearing, I am to add $9,500 for the Cowie Well project to operations, and everything else is fine.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Fancy?
I still think, I know it's only a paperwork thing and it's on there, but 24, 25, Queen's Place Drive service extension of 950,000, we're not gonna be doing that road. It gives a false look that we're gonna put a road in there that we're not gonna put in.
That's the next discussion.
That's
Okay.
the next discussion?
Yeah, so we need to finalize that today as well. So-
Yeah. So,
So Director Grant's been working on that, and
he
he can
can come out here again.
come back here and give you an update of where we're at with that and what council's options are, and then you can decide what you want to do.
Right.
I didn't bring any notes with me, so Joanne can correct me when I'm wrong.
I didn't read a lot of that stuff. Let's do it over my head.
So over the last week, been having conversations back and forth with the Queens Care Building Society, with the project management group for the build, and between us. So finally, 8:30 this morning, got a response from them exactly, well, I shouldn't say exactly, on approximately what they're proposing. So the proposal that they presented to council was an extension of 65.5 meters, back and forth a few times again, which only offers them a driveway to their property. That's what they want. They want a piece of private infrastructure constructed. They want to do the work, and they want the region to pay for it. Their proposal doesn't see any service extension or anything of that nature. So what we need, I guess, is direction on what council wants to do with respect to that allocated parcel of road allowance. You're late.
And Director Grant, this will be 24-25, correct?
Pardon me?
This will be in the 24-25 year?
My understanding of what they presented to council is they wanted to work done immediately. In conversation with one of the group, they just want to complete it before the building opens its doors in
Okay.
2027.
Six.
Six, yeah.
So it's not in their plan, if whatever council decides, it's not in our plan to do it this year, it would have to be next year, the year after.
Councillor Brown?
Even if they break ground, all they'll need is just a rough road to get heavy equipment in over.
Which is what they have right now. They have access, and that's all they're looking for.
So the question for council today is, their price was based on just putting in essentially a driveway, not to our standards, but pave it and whatever they want to get to their property and their driveways. So the question is, do we sell them the land and let them do it themselves and contribute or not contribute? Do we give them an easement over our land and let them do as they wish to upgrade the road and put in pavement or whatever to their standard, not ours? Or do we continue to own it and put it in at our cost and then build it to the proper standard that the rest of the road is built to?
Which would enable further development down the road as next
And if
steps.
we put it in, we would put in water and sewer, because if you do develop that other vacant lot or go further in the future, the water and sewer is under there now, versus what they're proposing is they're just gonna put a road, not water and sewer. So if you decide 2 years down the road to develop the other lands over there, you're gonna dig it all up and redo their whole thing, start over again. If they do it themselves, and just build a roadway with no water and sewer underneath.
So there's the three options: easement, sell, own it, and put it in ourselves.
What will the cost be? What are we looking at for cost?
So going through the different scenarios, ballpark the costs to be, I guess what the group is looking for to put their driveway in, they want about $5,000 a meter. What we would do with service extension would be between 6 and 7, depending on how far we go. So if we go the full, I think the cheapest option was to go the full extent right to the walking trail to 167 meters. Reduces down the linear cost to $5,700 a meter. If we only go to 65.5, the cost is $6,600 a meter. So there's a variation there, just cost savings once you get on the ground. But you know, ballpark right now between $6,000 and $7,000 a meter to extend that street.
So to go all the way to the end is how much?
It was $950,000 for the project.
And if we were to build it to our standard, to what they want, the 260 feet or whatever, that would come out to,
That was $430,000.
that if we built it to our standard 430.
And we don't need it built all the way until we need it, and does 430,000, that's at the top price per meter. That's not at the reduced price if we
It
use.
is. That'd be a full development
Right.
of the street to enable shouldering development.
430,000.
So is this what's in red here?
Yes, I think that's what's.
What's in red is what they're seeking to be paved and turned into a driveway for their purpose, their private purpose.
So the 430 would be that distance, we would just build it
Yes.
wider and with water and sewer underneath,
Sidewalks, lighting or
Sidewalk.
not?
Yeah.
Yes.
sidewalk, street light.
Councillor Charlton?
So we can put that into their second entrance and end the road there for 430,000 is what you're saying? And then that enables that road to be extended if there ever becomes a possibility in the future for development.
Are we nodding our heads in this, Councillor Brown?
I'm in favor of that approach, as we've talked, we don't want to landlock that piece of land that we have in there, and I think to make it developable, I'm in favor of that.
Counselor Muse?
So, 430,000, does that include water and sewage?
It does, and that would bring us basically to the end of what they got as a red block of their proposal. If there was to be something developed on that, the Toboggan Hill, that parcel of land, we would have to extend again to enable that opportunity to actually feasibly exist. So I guess that's kind of the discussion. We all, I think, agree that we wanna retain that parcel as street allowance, but I guess to what extent do we wanna develop it at this point, would be the next question.
So, where do they plan on hooking on to the water and sewage?
They're connecting right where services end currently.
Right where it ends?
Yeah.
Deputy Mayor Fancy?
So we talked before, it was gonna be 400 and some thousand, but then it could have been 600 and some thousand from our last discussion. So if we agree to this, that would stay at that price? I mean, we don't, since is the thing going to fluctuate on us and not know, we're saying 400 and some today, and next year that gets put in is 600 and some, also we're up 100 to 200,000 that we never expected.
That's the reality. The market control of materials is way out of our control. And what it could be next year, I can't even, I can only tell you what it costs today and estimate for next year based on the best information we got. And 430 is a comfortable number today. If we were to do it starting now, next year that will be higher for certain.
But it won't be done this year, it'll be done next year.
That's correct. No different than any other construction projects on the list.
Counselor Muse?
So, I'm just saying, if you didn't do the water and sewer, how much would it cost? Do you have any idea?
310,000 is what they're proposing, to just put asphalt surface down to access the property.
310,000?
And sidewalk?
Sidewalk, we don't know what size sidewalk. They say sewer and water and storm and street lighting, but they didn't comment on exactly what that means. But they did say that it's strictly for their private use and their retention, to be their piece of private infrastructure.
Their private infrastructure. Counselor Gidney?
I would agree that we go with the 65 meters and we do it, water and sewer, do it, then that way we don't have to dig it up. If we do, at a later date, decide to extend that, that would just save a little bit of money in the long run. And I think we should retain it, do this, and move on, because there's a lot of other things going on that we've gotta deal with, and I think we've gotta put this to rest so that they can, that the manor has a concrete view. That's where I stand on this, thank you.
Other people?
I guess just to that comment, I don't think we have to decide today at 65 and a half meters where we stand. I think that we're established we're going at least 65 and a half, and over the next 12 months identify exactly how far we want to go.
And we can
finalize the project costs.
And we can give them an answer to their request. Is everyone okay with that?
Yeah.
Counselor Romero?
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I'm in full support of the manor, so, yeah. And I think we do need to retain this, this land and also this roadway.
Anyone greatly opposed?
Just a comment too along with it, because there's been so much talk about us not wanting to put a road up through there. It was never, ever asked before. This is the first of the ask. So any comments that were ever out there saying that the council didn't want to put a road up there was false. That we're negotiating now of putting the road up through.
Counselor Muse?
And I'm not saying that we build the road and up with water and sewage. The problem I have is, and I don't know how much I'm allowed to say, the contract we had with them before, they hooked onto the water and sewage at the corner. Myself, I think, you do agree that we gotta put water and sewage when we make the road, but it's a glorified driveway. That's what it is.
But we have to be hopeful, and hopeful that someday there will be something further up there, or, we have to think about future councils and 5 and 10 years down the road. Time passes really quickly, and things change really fast in neighborhoods.
I mean, you wouldn't put that road in and extend it 65 meters and not put water and sewer and then go tear it up later to extend
That's
water
right.
and sewer because the Manor would have no access to their entrance. So you
Good
can't do
point,
that.
Councillor Charlton.
I'm not saying we don't put water and sewer, I'm saying that
Yeah.
maybe the Manor should help pay for some of the water and sewer. I got no problem with the road, but I have a problem with the contract saying that they were gonna hook on at the corner, and now we're gonna extend it down. Just my opinion.
Things change, and we find ourselves in different situations. And we work through the process and do what we think is best for the future. Councillor Romero?
I have no problem with this. I mean, they're bringing this facility here. It's helping out with Hillsview Acres. That was a big problem for us, and I have no problem with the region, paying for this. I really don't.
So we'll leave it on, though we'll reduce that 950
To 4:30.
to
for now.
430.
Recognizing it's.
Four now,
Four,
four now.
450?
Yeah.
No, 4:30, four now.
Oh, four
Yeah.
now.
Well,
Okay,
yeah, but we'll,
That's right, recognize it's in next year's 24,
Yeah.
25, but next year, council might say, we
Put
don't
it to
need to
the
do
end.
it next year because they're still doing their groundwork and they'll just ruin the road.
Right.
And council might say, well, let's put it out to 25, 26, recognizing that every year you extend it, the cost go up.
but then you don't wanna put a big new road,
And
you
then
know,
have it
don't wanna
destroyed
build
by
something and
equipment building.
if they're having massive equipment driving over it, though.
Any numbers we put in outside of this year should be written in pencil anyhow.
So,
Even this year's are in pencil to some degree.
so directions for staff,
It's just those two things.
you heard,
Yep.
the changes.
Change the capital investment plan to reduce the 24-25 Queens Place Drive service extension to $430,000 and add $9,500 to the operating budget for the Cowie Well. And then are we all
Good to
happy?
go for Tuesday night,
I'll write out the
recognizing that
staff
we'll be in
report.
Port Matoon, for this meeting. And we'll get our budget done, so I know a lot of staff are gonna be happy because they've been waiting to, they haven't been able to move forward, in the world of unknowing. And, anything else?
And will that be taped as well?
Yes,
Council?
Heather is going to set up, excuse the noise today, but they were working here and we booted them out. We sent them to the basement. By, I'm saying our next council meeting, this should be good to go.
I hope so.
We hope so. Yes,
But will our council meeting be taped at Port Matoon?
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
It's that same iPhone 3 there.
What's recording us right now?
Oh, it's recording now, okay.
Any
Well,
other,
sometimes
any other questions?
It's the original iPhone.
Okay.
Anyway, this has been an up and down with staff and council and everything else, and let's just wish everyone well on this budget and move forward and have a successful year and get things done. And, we all know what to tell people when they ask us about the bridge, right? Yes, we are waiting to hear from Bell, so we know what we can do, and it's no secret, we can tell people that we're gonna do a temporary fix as soon as we hear from Bell. And, our plan is to put an extension, a very safe extension to the bridge, a hang-on sidewalk, and widen that road. Is that it?
Yes.
I thank you all, and I will see everyone on Tuesday night. Councillor Gidney, do you have that in your calendar? You're going to Port Matoon.
No, I was waiting for the, I'm getting, the Queens, Transit to take me out, so they'll pick me up, make sure I'm there on time.
Maybe just take all council together.
Good idea.
No, it's my bus. This is my bus.
You all back?
Thank you.